What are some of the Easter eggs coming out of Episode 11 of Andor, and how does the show serve to improve on the already powerful ending of Rogue One? We'll be letting you in on all of the details as the video progresses, so be sure to stick around till the end. Is Andor known for featuring Easter eggs? The Easter eggs of Andor's 11th episode continue to foreshadow the fate of its hero. Of course, most of the Disney Plus Star Wars shows are packed to the brim with Easter eggs, but Andor has had a tendency to keep that kind of thing to a minimum. For the most part, it's used as a character study, charting the transformation of its protagonist into the rebel hero that we recognize in Rogue One. There's a handful of familiar characters scattered here and there, but for the most part, the focus characters are those introduced to audiences for the first time within the show. Generally speaking, the intent of Episode 11 is all about getting the pieces in place for the upcoming finale. Marva Andor, Cassian's mom, has passed away during the rebels' imprisonment on Narkina 5, which of course means everyone is going to Ferrix in the hope that he'll be turning up there. Meanwhile, Luthen falls deeper into trouble after being intercepted by the Empire after leaving a meeting with the partisans of Saw Gerrera. True to form, there's only a handful of Easter eggs and references to other parts of the Star Wars universe within Episode 11. However, the ones that are present are sure to delight eagle-eyed viewers who do spot them. Episode 11 of Andor actually set up another of the partisans in secret. Saw Gerrera's partisans are a key part of this episode. That much you definitely knew from watching. However, what you might not have seen at a glance is that a future member of the partisans team was introduced in a very subtle, low-key way. This goes down when Cassian ends up being captured by a pair of Caridians. Caridians are a bit of an obscure race, one that has no love lost for the Empire, and appears to be on the side of the rebels to at least some extent. One of these such Caridians is actually a character we've seen before, none other than Cassian Jyn. This character is easy to distinguish with the huge cyclopoid cybernetic eye look that he's got going on, these being cyber-optic systems which are connected directly into his brain and grant him much sharper vision than usual. Cassian Jyn will eventually find his way into the partisans as he appears among them in Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. Notably, he's one of a small handful to survive the destruction of Jedha, albeit he apparently gets arrested soon after, according to Star Wars: The Smuggler's Guide. Let no good deed go unpunished, as they say. A number of Easter eggs in this episode center around Luthen. Elsewhere during this episode, we see Luthen barely evade capture after being hounded by a ship that's likely easy to recognize for those who watched Solo: A Star Wars Story. The uniquely shaped Cantwell-class arrestor cruiser was originally designed by, and thusly named after, Colin Cantwell for its appearance in the first Star Wars movie, only to end up on the cutting room floor. Although some elements of the design ended up finding their way into the Death Star, most notably its dishes. Cantwell had envisioned these satellite dishes as being used to focus the vessel's tractor beam. The production crew of Solo saw the sketches and opted to make use of them, as well as name them in Cantwell's honor. These arrestor cruisers in the film are said to be made by Quat Drive Yards to help the Empire deal with smugglers across the galaxy. They're notably equipped with ion cannons that could have crippled Luthen's ship, but fortunately they underestimated the threat that he posed until it was too late. It should come as no surprise that Luthen was prepared for the eventuality of his capture, as his ship, the Fondor, is actually equipped with a number of falsified transponder IDs, which he'd presumably acquired through the black market. The one chosen here is actually another of Episode 11's seldom-seen Easter eggs. The last four digits of it, 2505, actually serve as a reference to the release date of the Episode 4, the original Star Wars film, which came out on May 25th. Fittingly, the doomed planet of Alderaan, which met its end in that film, is then spoken of, as evidently this transponder ID belonged to the Alderaan Trade Alliance. And Luthen still wasn't done making way for such Easter eggs. This guy really seemed to be prepared for just about anything, as his ship is also equipped with a surprising countermeasure to contend against tractor beams. This allows him to slip through the expanding net of the Empire. The trick goes a little bit like this, and is actually relatively simple. He releases a few waves of shrapnel towards the tractor beam, allowing the beam's own pull to speed them up to such a velocity that they end up crashing with destructive force, using the pull of the beam against it. This takes a few moments to prepare, since the shrapnel has to be aimed quite precisely to ensure the tractor beam is properly neutralized. This kind of thing has actually been seen before in the Star Wars Expanded Universe, though rarely have we seen it work to such strong effect. It's known to be expensive, and many smugglers wouldn't be able to afford this. But Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen is a man of great wealth, and has obviously invested plenty of credits into his own survival. After escaping the beam of the Cantwell-class arrestor, Luthen followed up by demonstrating some remarkable and unique firepower, as he makes use of a weapon that's quite new to us. His ship emits emits plasma waves from the side that actually resemble the blades of lightsabers. They may well be powered via kyber crystals. Luthen is known as a student of history and may well have stumbled upon techniques, both offensive and defensive, that have otherwise been lost to time, and that may explain why this ship is the only one we've seen making use of this weapon. Now, let's get into some of the major ways this episode foreshadows the events of Rogue One. Episode 11 has a poignant ending, seeing our protagonist staring out across the beach in a scene which does a great job foreshadowing his eventual death on Scarif in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. What's more, he was actually thinking about death as he did this, his mother's demise to be precise. And in that moment, he held the belief that his mother would be proud of what he did on Narkina 5. In all likelihood, he was thinking of Marva Andor on Scarif as well, knowing that he'd given everything for the cause that she believed so much in. Another moment that brought some poignance to the end of Rogue One comes from our pal Luthen Rael, who gave us a heavy quote when he was speaking to Lonni Jung. He made a statement showing that he knew something of his fate, suggesting that he knowingly burns his life to make a sunrise he will never see himself. That's true for all the protagonists of Rogue One. Cassian and Jyn's heist of the Death Star plans from the highly secured Imperial base is a great show of the bold defiance that Luthen always strove for. Even though Andor, in many ways, changed the timeline for the formation of the Rebel Alliance, nevertheless the core message for the rebellion has never changed. Luthen gives up his life for the future of someone else, just as Cassian and Jyn do for the sake of getting one step closer to the overthrow of the Empire. Rogue One's ending isn't exactly a sunrise, but the iconic explosion that consumes Cassian and Jyn on the planet of Scarif is in some way the culmination of Luthen's work. Their sacrifice is only enriched, knowing that the sacrifices of so many other rebels came before them. How else does the show improve Rogue One? Rogue One was essentially born from a single line of A New Hope, inspired by the knowledge that the rebellion in some way stole the plans for the Death Star. Just as Rogue One fleshed that out, the job of Andor is to flesh out some of the new characters that Rogue One presented. The fate of these characters has been foreshadowed from the start, but the show also goes so far as to deepen the audience's understanding of why the Rogue One squadron was ever a thing in the first place. Crucial characters such as Ruskat Melshi and Saw Gerrera are given much more background. Cassian, of course, has much more of a complex story in Andor, as the film barely scratched the surface of his motivations and dedication to the rebellion. In general, Andor sees good characters being forced to make a very tough decision, which is intended to change and grow each of them for the better. One character from the original trilogy that it does this with is Mon Mothma, where Episode 10 shows us a dark twist hinting that Mon may be forced to betroth her own daughter to the son of Davos Skolden. It's wild to see how much she changes from this point to where Rogue One happens, going from secretly funding the rebels to being the leader of the Alliance's ops. And this is all the time we have for today's video. Which of these subtle Easter eggs serves as your favorite? Do you agree that Andor does a lot to further enrich the story, and particularly the ending of Rogue One? Be sure to let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And until next time, thanks for watching.